Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
I feel the force.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We are broadcasting to you from Cali, Colombia. I am with Elvi Musica and we're in Cali, Colombia for Copa Farallones. Copa Farallones is a cannabis festival. It's also a contest where Elvi and I, my wife Teresa, are judges in sativa flowers, indica flowers, concentrates, and that they have music and booths. But Elvi is our guest this week, and Elvi is a very famous medical marijuana patient. She was one of the first people in the United States to get medical marijuana. We were talking about that a little earlier. So Elvi, you became the first woman,
Right.
and just the third person in the
Correct.
United States to get your medical marijuana.
After the prohibition, yeah.
Yeah, well, they had a special program. What's that program called?
Oh
The
yeah,
Compassionate
back
Use?
from the 60s, a new drug investigative program. And when you enter that program, the investigation has to make sure you find all the negative side effects of marijuana and report those. That's all you need to report. And unfortunately for them, some of us have really been trying. I have been trying for 45 years, and I cannot find the negative sides of cannabis. Hemp, I thank God for it every single day of my life.
Right. So, you were arrested in Florida in the 80s.
Yeah,
When were you first arrested?
March of 88.
March
Yeah,
of 88. And this was in Florida.
in Hollywood, Florida.
Uh-huh.
And the press really responded to it once I finally got them to cover it. First they didn't.
So
even
you
do that.
contacted the press and said,
Oh
look,
yeah,
I
I
am
nagged
using
them
this
till I said,
for
look.
my glaucoma.
Right, and by then I had medical records that went back to 1976 where I showed that I came in with sight in both eyes.
Uh-huh.
And they did, and they insisted on me having surgeries that I neither wanted nor needed. And I asked what would be the chances that there would be any improvement. And the detrimental side was mostly that it would be a 30% chance that it would help me at all. Why I was,
So what year was that?
that was back in 76.
1976. So that's the first time you had surgery.
I had it in 77, in February of 77. But
I
I
see.
started going to the Pascom Palmer Eye Institute there because the doctor I was seeing really believed in the marijuana treatment and thought that they would help me because they had access to that research program. But no, they treated me like some kind of dog that just came up from the street and pooped in the wrong place. That's it. That's how I was treated. And to this day, some of that stigma that we have created over 6 generations of lies and misinformation still strikes me here and there whenever it feels like it. And you can't stop it. You can't undo people when you have 4 and 5 generations of lies behind them. You can just show them the way and hope they see, and obviously they have. I mean, 40 of our states have approved medical marijuana, so we know that people are behind us, and that it's time that we demand to be treated like other citizens who have the right to the Constitution. We don't. We
So
don't. We denied everything.
Let's go back a little chronologically. So you first had surgery in '77,
Yes,
and you were with the Basker Eye
Bascom
Institute,
Palmer Eye Institute,
and that
University
surgery
of Miami.
had negative effects.
No, and it was a very commonly used one, but it didn't do for me.
So, but then in 1988, which is like 11 years later, but you were arrested for
No,
marijuana.
no. What happened between 1976 and 7 and 88 was my life was destroyed completely by fake marijuana laws, like so many people are. Because before I knew it, I no longer worked at the bank. I couldn't keep the job I had going in and out of surgeries to that place in Miami. My children, I lived in constant fear of losing custody of my children. Luckily, I did get a divorce, and the children went off to college anyway. So before I got arrested, but I also knew I would get arrested because after 1980, I decided, after failed surgeries and taking every drop available, and
For your glaucoma.
my glaucoma, and nothing worked. One of them, Timoptic, which became Timolol, the other way around. That worked for about 2 years. I was really happy because I didn't have to go looking for marijuana, which that was a chore all by itself. And the one thing you're supposed to do, avoid at all costs, if you have glaucoma or any other serious illness. In fact, most of us really have to benefit from avoiding stress. Stress is, next to cigarettes, is the biggest killer in the United States. And as far as glaucoma and everything else that you get wrong with your system, the stress has too much to do with it. And there is no better stress reliever than cannabis, but I had to find that out. I didn't know that yet.
So between 77, 76, and 88, was the Basker Eye Institute, were they supportive of your use of cannabis before you got the recommendation, or how did they deal with you?
Well, I came in with medical records that showed them, because another doctor had been taking them under the law, and they really hated him for doing that and helping other people, but he did end up in other drugs and getting in all kinds of trouble. So, but that was long after our relationship was over, because I was at Bascom Palmer, where I met the doctors, and on the cuff, most of them said, whatever you're doing is working, keep it up. And I'm telling you this as your friend, like the first doctor that recommended marijuana to me said, you have to have marijuana or you will be blind. And he said, and I'm telling you that as your friend, not your doctor. And I thought that was pretty amusing, because I had just met that man half hour before.
So, but that was even before your 1988 arrest.
Yes. And 88, what really brought it on about, I told you I started growing my own because there was just no way I was going to keep going to surgeries, and there was hardly anything to lose.
Mm-hmm.
But I started growing my own marijuana, and I knew that would attract, and I never hid it. In fact, the police eventually told me, you don't have to tell everybody, you have to be quiet. I said, how is a blind person going to find seeds if she's quiet? Because nobody knows she needs them. People don't come knocking at your door saying, do you need seeds today? Do you have glaucoma or whatever?
Right.
So that was not an option for me.
So eventually, though, the Hollywood police came in and arrested
Yeah.
you in '88, and they charged you in state court?
Yeah, state court. And it was Broward County,
Broward County,
Yeah,
the place
Broward
that
County.
later became famous in the year 2000 for the hanging chads of Broward County, with the election of between Al Gore and George
Don't
Bush
even.
the
Don't-
first. I
I'm
can't
so
help it. When I
lucky.
hear of Broward County, that's what I think of.
Well, when I hear what you just mentioned, makes it very easy for me to understand that there is a guide above me that creates every road I travel, and what interesting roads it's brought me, and carries me on a leaf. It's that leaf that takes me everywhere. That's brought me to you. I've met my cannabis family. You are all over this planet. I have
That's
met
right.
you in Switzerland, in Finland, and all over Europe, and of course in every state in our country.
And here we are in Cali, Colombia.
My
Your hometown.
birth
You were born
place.
in
Yeah.
Cali. And how old were you when you left here?
I left when I was 12, 13.
12 or 13. And when did you leave Colombia?
That's when I left Colombia.
okay,
I
so
left
you were
right
12.
out of Cali, went to Panama the same way we were going back,
Oh, okay.
except to Miami.
And then to Miami. I
and then
see.
New York.
I see.
Yeah.
So, but in '88, you were arrested and you went to court in Broward County. And what happened in court with the judge? How is it that the court, between you being arrested and then you being named as the
Celebrity.
first woman, the third person in the United States history to be given medical marijuana
Well,
by
that
the
came
federal
as a
government.
result of this particular arrest and hearing.
So there's a trial.
There's a
Yeah.
trial, and Judge Marky Boland could have scared me half to death because he was running for appellantship. So to stand up from marijuana of any kind in that backward state, I'm sorry, but there's a problem there, a serious problem. I mean, it took them how many years after my case established a medical defense for that state? But it took them, 25 more years to get it go in the election and vote it in? And good luck on that one, too.
Yeah, well, they finally do have medical
Right,
marijuana in
right,
Florida.
right.
It is quite a strange tale. But so at the trial in Broward County, were you found guilty?
At the trial in Broward County showed what all I had been through, including all of those surgeries I talked to you about. One of them was a surgery that included 21 shots directly put on that eye they operated on
Good Lord.
within 2 weeks after surgery. So every day, the first week you got 2, then the second week 1, to keep the scar tissue from building. All you had to do was stop doing the stupid surgeries that was causing it. I could have told them that.
Right.
They should have been seeing that.
Right.
But that's what happened. But what happened was that in '87, I had a real bad surgery. When I came out of there,
So that was your second surgery.
oh no,
That was your first.
we lost track about how many were there before between '76 and '88.
I see.
And but the '87 one was the one where I went home and then I started hemorrhaging, and the next day I went to the institute and I couldn't see even if a light. You know how you can close your eyes, but if a light goes on in the room, or you see light towards the window with your eyes closed. I do even none.
Yeah.
But at that stage, nothing like that. Only a flash. Some light got trapped in there and kept flashing at me for 2 or 3 months. The life became such a nightmare that's what you hated, was waking up, because that when you had to enter the nightmare or you didn't see anymore. And it was horrifying because that was my better eye at the time. But gradually the pot brought it back. Yeah. Anyway, at the trial, the judge decided that if there was one thing they would not do is question Alvin Musica's honesty. And he pointed out that I had no business letting the police in that house. That there was not a hint of criminality in what I did. In fact, it turned out to be sort of a reverse insanity thing, where he told the court that for me not to have used marijuana, knowing what I knew then, which is next to nothing compared to now, would definitely have constituted insanity. So I was proven not guilty of insanity in that court, and everything else.
So that's what the judge said.
That's what the judge said, yes.
So he found you not guilty.
Absolutely not guilty of
And then how did you go
defense
from having the not guilty
to getting
to
legal?
getting the being on the compassionate use?
Well, as soon as I appeared on my hometown newspaper after the arrest, then Robert Randall contacted me from Washington D.C. and I recognized his name because
he was the very first
he was
person.
the first one back in '76. But I had no idea where you could find someone like Robert Randall. Like most of you, I don't know where to go for those things.
He wrote a number of books about his glaucoma and medical marijuana, and he worked with a lot of national and international cannabis experts. But he was the very first person to get on that federal program.
He instituted it, or he broke into it, because it was going on since the '60s, but nobody supposedly even knew about it.
Nobody used
And
marijuana.
that's what
to
we're
get
told.
on.
We can't tell anybody, and we could not agree to that because we've been blinded by the ignorance that's been forced upon us, and we cannot continue the ignorance. Once you see the light, you cannot close your eyes and become blind again. At least to that part of your mind, So that's that trial changed my life forever, because once I got out of there without the stigma of being known as a criminal, now my community, which is South Florida, so it's divided. Of course, you got many people who want to help you, and many people, oh my God, my kids are going to go rob the gardens because people are growing marijuana. My neighbor, whose son used to steal my plants, told my friend that she wouldn't vote for medical marijuana when just tried to put it on the ballot, and she said, why? And she says, because that will get all the kids smoking. Think it's okay.
Well, you know, that's so ironic with what we know now, is that the body produces endocannabinoids. And
Yes.
one of the key parts of the body that produces endocannabinoids is with women who are about to nurse their baby. Just before they nurse their baby, women express what's called colostrum, which is largely endocannabinoids. It's basically the same compound as THC, the active ingredient in smoked marijuana. That is what women give babies. So for them to be afraid that their children are going to get this thing, that little do they know, it's part of their mother's breast milk.
We spent a lot of money with the Jamaican, Costa Rican studies, and
Yeah.
Dr. Dreyer,
Yeah, Melody Dreyer.
Melody Dreyer,
who,
and she definitely followed through as the kids went off to school. And those children whose parents did use the herb as their religious beliefs acquire of them, but those children were superior in intelligence to the others, and
yeah,
very
by a small
cognitive.
degree.
Just-
And they were a higher birth weight.
yeah, everything. So, and everything kept improving, but then when they were they were never getting those results they wanted, all those negative things.
Well, the same thing happens
So they
with
stopped
cancer
it.
research. You know,
Yes.
there's a guy at UCLA, Donald Tashkin, who is a pulmonologist and a oncologist, a cancer doctor,
Yeah.
and he specialized in lung cancer. So he produced all these studies for
Yeah.
the DEA and the Drug Institute, and they kept giving animals and humans cannabis, expecting that the results would show that they have more lung cancers. But instead, what they found, and they wouldn't say for about a decade, and then finally Donald Tashkin became a cannabis, not really an advocate, but he would tell the truth, which was that if you smoked marijuana, you were less likely to get lung cancer than if you never smoked anything at all. And if you smoked marijuana and tobacco, you were still less likely to get cancer than you were if you just smoked tobacco. So,
He had 10,000 people in that study for a period of 10 years, right?
yeah, for longer than that.
And-
He studied it for a long time.
Yeah,
like
he'd been on it
30
before,
years
but
now.
officially, you know,
Yeah.
then. And what he found was that people who smoke cigarettes only, they had the highest rates of cancers, no ifs, buts, maybes.
Yeah.
The ones that smoke cannabis and nicotine had about half the rate of cancer. But those who only smoked cannabis, not a one of them ended up with lung cancer. Now, why wasn't that in the front page of your newspaper? Wouldn't your parents or everybody else's parents have breathed a little bit better if they knew half the truth about marijuana? Like the
Yeah.
name cannabis, you know.
So in '88, you worked with Bob Randall and got on this federal program. And they would give you, and they did this until recently, and we'll get to recently soon, but let's go back. And they give you a tin of pre-rolled cigarettes, and they give you 300 pre-rolled cigarettes a month.
And I call them my green Pall Malls because they look just like a Pall Mall cigarette out of the package, and I don't mean the short ones.
And I as a cannabis aficionado, I can say they smelled like the Mexican cannabis from the 60s, kind of a low-grade
We call it dirt
sativa.
weed in Florida. What it
Yeah,
smells
yeah.
like.
Brickweed was another word for it.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and it was under 2% THC, right?
Well, okay, no, we started and supposedly they were having 3 or 4% THC, but the thing is, now I know why they did that. I remember when I was told that I had to apply for 10 cigarettes a day. I had never used more than 3 a day in the years I've been using it illegally. Okay, so
And
I
Bob Randall advised you.
yeah, and then Bob said, "No, Ellie, you don't know what you're talking about. You better take those 10 joints and you will use
Yeah.
them." And he was right. I soon had to learn how to bake, and they were more efficient in brownies and cookies. So not to mention the roads were very dangerous with the smell. So I became an eater, very much so. But between smoking and eating, I kept my pressures pretty much under control the first years with government garbage, and that's what I call it now. What it is they grow, I know they grow some nice plants because every now and then, recently, I had found little buds in there.
So there's a federal farm that's been
In
the sole
Mississippi.
place that can grow research marijuana, and it's in Oxford, Mississippi, University of Mississippi. and they've been growing cannabis for at least 50 years
Yeah.
for federal research projects.
That's awesome.
But they are, what they're growing isn't very good.
It's Mexican origin. The seeds are Mexican that they bring there. I don't know
Yeah.
why Mexican, but that's what they chose.
But the THC level dropped over time, didn't it? At first,
No,
it was.
no, no. Here's what it is. What they did is you had to smoke 10 of them to get or eat them. Of course, I ate them. I ate at least half. And so that's the only way that I could make sure that my glaucoma really was under control. But the thing is that now I see why they gave all of us 10 of those. So now their excuse for not making it legal is to tell you that we would have to smoke so damn much that couldn't be healthy for us, although it didn't do any harm to do it for 20 some odd years. Or was it 30 for me? Well, I had it since then, and I got my last prescription last year before the COVID hit. And I was in Florida. I had to go to Florida every year to pick up a new prescription. I was supposed to do that every
So in
year.
2019.
In 2019, yeah.
So that was your last time to pick up.
No, that I with a prescription that was good until a month ago. Okay.
Okay, so you had the prescription till just a month ago, but you decided to stop.
Yeah,
because
because something horrible happened in 12. Well, first of all, in 11, first of all, I had to hang around Florida for 2-3 months, and you never knew how long until they decide that you were going to get your pot. Then, there was always excuses. Oh, they had a snowstorm. They had this. They had that. Whatever, and everything be like.
So this marijuana is grown in Mississippi, but then it's processed into cigarettes
in North Carolina
at the Research Institute in
Try
North
out.
Carolina. Then they put it in these big tins that have 2 layers. And are there 300 joints in
No,
a tin?
it's got 1 layer and it's 300 of them straight down.
I see.
And it looks like a palmo. They're really pretty big, long. So
Yeah.
it's not 2 layers. I've heard that tale too. Just like I hear the tale that they send me one every month. Like I wish. Just like they tell me my name is Elvi Musica when it really is Elvi Musica, just like music. But okay, it all goes.
Okay. So you'd receive these, but you'd have to go. Well, you lived in Florida, but then you
Yeah.
moved here to Oregon.
Many
Well,
years
first you
later.
went to California.
Well,
But-
first I became an activist and found
Exactly.
out
So
that I've
in
been dealing
88,
with a
you
bunch
be-
of lies.
So we met, and I think it was like 1989 or 1990 at the National Normal Conference.
Labor Day convention for Normal, their 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd see each other. But you also met a number of other activists.
Yes.
And one of them was Jack Hare and his friends Debbie Goldsberry and
Yes,
Maria,
yes.
and they started doing what's called the Hemp Tour.
Yeah.
Now Jack Hare had written a book. He wrote it in my house back in the first edition in 1985, but and it went through a total of 12 editions before he passed in 2010.
Yeah.
But you guys went campus to campus, event to event, with his book and with you as a legal medical marijuana patient, and would have these events talking about how hemp can help our environment and produce cannabis.
Hemp can save the planet, yes.
Yeah.
I do remember. I was participating with Jack Hare in the hemp tour there, but I also...
How did you start doing that? I mean, did they
At
say,
the- at
come
the-
on the tour?
At the Normal conference, different people spoke to me about doing something. I spoke to Bob, who was really the leader of our group. He had a group he called the Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics.
Bob Randall,
Bob Randall,
who was
right.
medical marijuana.
And he was the one that had to
Pioneer.
talk to the people with the funding. So really there were 38 states, including Florida, which had provisions for medical marijuana. The only problem is no one knew about it. Not the doctors, not the cops, not the patients.
And they didn't have a supply.
Right, so it was useless.
Yeah.
It was useless for me. Anyway. So
That's how there were 38 states that had this medical until 1996, when Dennis Perone, working with AIDS patients in San Francisco, pushed a statewide medical marijuana initiative, not just for AIDS patients or glaucoma patients, but California was the first one that allowed patients to produce their own marijuana and allowed doctors to recommend marijuana for any condition that the doctor thought it might help. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and you know that he had already done it in '91 for San Francisco.
Dennis Perone had done the
Cannabis was-
city
yeah,
initiative,
ordinance.
Proposition
That was-
P, I think.
Yeah, I forget P. That was
Yeah,
it, Perone.
Proposition
His last
P.
name was Perone. And so yeah, he was, and at the same time this was happening. That's why I started traveling more and more to California and the West Coast altogether. That I was working with Valerie Corral, who was an amazing person. We went to the Justice Department together, trying to get them to loosen up on people who were in prison for medical marijuana and things like that we were working on. And that was, we also did road trips. I joined another group and took turns with them. We all sort of worked jointly. The girls that had the Cannabis Action Network was mostly a group of girls, but they acquired quite a few guys that helped with the computers and the setting up. It was an amazing network of how they were connected with all these universities. I have the utmost respect for Debbie Goldsberry as a leader. Actually, so organized, so incredibly organized. Which is
She still runs a dispensary down in Oakland. Yeah, several down there. I think.
She's still as beautiful as ever. Yeah.
But yeah, she's definitely in Oakland.
Yeah.
But so you started going on these campus to campus, city to city tours, and you'd have press conferences, demonstrations.
Everywhere.
So
yes.
how many years did you do that, and how many cities did you visit?
Well,
and did you have like, this year we'll do these tours these months? Or?
We got the tours, and I still got copies of them. It's funny because we started with one, and it was the East Coast, from Maine to Florida to Maine, I mean, the both ways. And then we started going, the second year we started going into the Midwest, and that was fun. But actually we were doing that from the beginning because we were working with High Times and the Freedom Fighters, they call them, and that's where we met in Michigan, and that's where they elected me as Freedom Fighter of the Year the first time, and I'm the first person.
That was also the year you were the first honorary judge, the very first Amsterdam Cannabis Cup that High Times did, the Amsterdam High Times Cannabis Cup, which, to our knowledge, was the very first contest to judge cannabis, to see, is this one better, is that one better?
Yeah,
So you've
so
been,
fun.
and here we are now in Cali, Colombia,
in my
judging
hometown.
the best cannabis in this area, but you were the honorary judge at the very first one back in 1991.
What do you mean by honorary? That's a full judge.
Yeah, you were a full judge, but you were the
awardee.
the star,
They
so
were-
to
they were-
speak,
they
because you were
were-
the legal
Yeah.
cannabis patient.
But I got to share that title with Roger Belknap from West Virginia, who had started to publish. We were so excited when we read the Emperor Wears No Clothes. That's what brought us all together. And when we read Jack's book, and those people were Roger was taking a page out of the Emperor to stay there and paid their hometown newspaper all kinds of money to just publish that page once a month, each page. Well, that got him very upset. With him. The feds came after him for a couple of plants he had near his house, and take his house, send him off to jail for 5 years. So he shared the title of Freedom Fighter of the Year with me. We went to Amsterdam together.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Exciting.
So, you how many years did you do the hemp tour?
With the hemp, I toured from 1991 officially. I started in 1990 at the University of Florida, my first rally, which took me to your conference on Labor Day. But really officially with the Cannabis Action Network, it started in February of
91.
Yeah, 91. And then I started doing their spring. They had two tours, a spring tour and a summer tour. And like I said, we started out with one side of the country until we went all the way to the West Coast and had events in all three things. There was three tours going on all the time by the time it was over. And what was funny was the bigger rallies would want me there wherever they were. So I'd be doing something, say, in Georgia this week, but they needed me in San Francisco next week because they were doing something there. So people would fly me there to do that, and then I would go to the next rally that we were holding.
You'd meet up with
at
your
different
traveling
places.
tour.
Yes, it was absolutely the best, the most unique time, best time of my life. In that, I always thought I wanted a big family. And of course I had
two children.
Two, and I dropped the 0. Those 20 became 2. And they grew up and they were in college, and I thank God because I would never feel free to be an activist until they were gone.
I was always worried. My wife and I have 3 children. Fortunately, they were not affected, outside their infancy. So
That's so cool.
I was always worried about it.
Yeah, well, I couldn't be me while I still had him at home. And on top of that, I had absolutely, positively no family support and all the underhanded rejection you could throw at anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. The worst part of my procedures was the lack of concern or care from those people who call themselves my family. And I'm sorry to say, but I thank God he took some of them away.
So they were against
it was too
marijuana.
much. Yeah, it
They were
was just too
against your
much.
use of
Yeah.
medical.
Oh yeah. No, I was a real. How dare I speak about
Most
marijuana?
activists for marijuana experience that. They become the black sheep in their family.
Yeah,
Or they
but-
were already the black sheep in their family because
Yeah.
they tell the truth about this.
Yeah. No, that I never got accepted by my mother, but I think that goes back to my being blind as a child, and she couldn't deal with that.
Mhm.
So I have to forgive that because she's sick. That's all. If you're sick, you can be held responsible for that. You don't
Right.
have to put up with the sickness that's making you sick if you hang around it too long. You have to make your own way with or without it, but you do have to understand that there's no blame here. People have different backgrounds, and we've all been lied at about this issue for 5-6 generations. It's not new. So you keep drilling these lies. I mean, I cannot believe the DEA to this day, when you do them an interview, they're still repeating the same old lies that now everybody knows are lies. Even people who believe in them, they know they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty sad. So where do you go? And that's another thing patients had to deal with at that time. If we were crazy enough to try it anyway, and if you were desperate, is the word, and you're going to do it, and where do you go for guidance? How do you use this marijuana? What kind? Did we even question what kind? If it works for you,
Yeah, it's what you could get.
What
There's
you
not
could
like a
get.
variety of kinds.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, I
Oh,
want
thank
this
you.
one or
Yeah.
that one. There was what you get.
Yeah,
Right.
$15 little bags of, they were ounces though, of total
Yeah.
dirt weed. And then you have to pay $20-25 to get some decent Mexican. And then we got our Sansamilia in Florida, and then it was 85 a quarter, and that was nuts to me.
There's an interesting thing in High Times magazine that we always looked at. One of the first things was the high trader at the back that told you what the price was
Yeah.
and what the kind and variety was for different places. Like Acapulco Gold in Miami went for this, and an ounce of Colombian in New York went
$40.
for
That's
that,
not
or
someone bought
you
me
know,
one.
it would tell you the high
Yeah.
price
Yeah.
from High Times. It was
Right,
one of the more
right.
useful parts of that magazine.
No, for us, what was really useful is because the cops were on our, they were looking out for us, and they didn't have kind things to do for us. And so what our biggest high times, well, they helped us by giving us lots of their magazines to sell, T-shirts, bumper stickers. They helped us tremendously on the road, and I don't know how much money they gave anybody, and I'm sure they did. But because we were hand to mouth activists.
Yeah. You're on the road. So Jack Hare was kind of the moving force behind these hemp tours, isn't that
Yeah,
right?
he started. Debbie and the girls started working for him, and then they decided they needed their own space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
Without-
so then
yeah.
Debbie
But they all worked
and the
together.
Cannabis Action
Yes,
Network
yes,
started
yes.
organizing it.
Yes.
Jack was kind of part of
And
their
we ran,
network.
we interacted with, Jack was one of those tours that I go back and forth with. In fact, I was going to leave wherever we were to go to North Carolina or something the next day. And one of those boys that I didn't even like to listen to, but he got hold of me and he says, you don't go with them. If you do, we're not responsible for whatever happens to you, okay?
Mm.
And I'm like, this those knobby little, bring his neck, and no, but he was right. They went and they had some acid with them. They got busted and they all spent 9 days in jail. And I was too green in the movement. That would have freaked
Good
me
thing
out.
you didn't go on that trip.
That probably would have been the end of my touring
Yeah, that
activism.
would not be a good trip.
And there was plenty of moments after. But what was good, like I said, High Times Magazine was the only place where we could go and find our schedules where we were going to be next day. Evidently, they got fed to them immediately after they were made.
I see.
And that was incredibly helpful.
So,
There you go.
at some point, you decided to move out of Florida to the West Coast. And first, you moved down to Northern California, isn't that right?
Right, to Sacramento, but that was it.
So, what
I
was
left
it that
because-
led to you leaving Florida and moving to Sacramento. You still had to deal with the doctor in Florida, though.
Yeah, I
to
still
get
had
your
program. My
tens
federal
of
program was
pre-rolled
with the federal program.
cigarettes.
My new chore was to find someone who would take over. Good luck on that. I've met many wonderful doctors, and even one or two that have thought of taking over the program and wanted to. At that time, my doctor really didn't want to let it go. It's what happened there. But you know, this was his baby. He brought in, and he was happy about it.
Yeah, I would imagine the
Yeah.
doctor who helped you implement it was pretty proud. It's quite the thing. Yeah.
But then things really changed because, like I said, I had to wait all that time, wondering when I was going to go home and all that. So in 2011, I had to leave without the pot. It was going to be coming. It was the same lines I got, you know, for 2 months before that. But my granddaughter's birthday was coming up, and I've been in Florida long enough anyway. I said, all right, can we arrange to have someone else pick? No, we can't do that. Yes, we can. My attorney said he would be the one picking it up, but I got permission to have it picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did. But unfortunately, I don't know who the lucky he gave it to was, but the idiot put the wrong zip code on there.
Oh.
So that 6 months. Oh, and I got smart because I couldn't afford to keep going to Florida all the time. So I said, and I was tired of carrying, like, he let me carry 8 cans back. That's an 8-month supply. But I wanted to cut it down to once a year. I said I could not afford to do it any more than that, especially when you got to hang out 2 or 3 months to find out when you're going
Sure.
home. So I arranged it, and this really thrilled me. Laws were changing all over the country by now. And it's 2000, and by now Oregon was legal too. And I had been, even though I lived in Florida, I worked in California and Oregon
I
and
know,
Washington.
you came through on the tours and helped with the medical
Initiatives.
marijuana initiative in California in '96, ours in Oregon
In
and
98.
Washington and Arizona in '98.
Yes, well, actually Arizona passed a law the same day California did,
Yeah,
but it didn't count there.
the legislature overturned it each time.
And
They passed it several times.
And it was the same year that Al Gore had his election really stolen. And, you know, I just thank God I got out of Florida. I know I would have been killed there because nobody told you what all was going on there. But there were demonstrations that were violent, and the state had been taken over by the creeps, I'm sorry to say. And, I mean, when you can steal an election from an environmental person like Al Gore, you don't care about the planet, and you sure as hell don't care about the people. So
Yeah.
wherever you are, you don't belong there as far as I'm concerned.
So you moved here to the West Coast, and then what happened in your surgery in 2011 and 2012
Well,
that they caused the damage that made you lose a little sight you had left?
Okay, well, here's what's so funny about all of that. All that time I'm using marijuana, right? Even if it's government marijuana, but I'm living in the right state, so I'm only getting a 6-month supply for them, and the other half of my equipment is the daytime marijuana, which doesn't get you that high. So, okay, I'll do that in the daytime, and I'll eat my baked goods at night, and I'll really smoke at night, make my own hash, and I did. And so I made it work for me that way. But after that episode, the next year is when they started the baloney, and nobody told me. They sent, I guess it's my fault for not reading with no eyes, I don't know. But they had dropped the THC out of the pot because they were determined to make sure the rest of the country, they finally started letting those mothers with their little kids who have been helped by THC. And I
So
mean,
they started producing these federal cigarettes that were pretty much THC free.
exactly that. And
Yeah. But you weren't
and
told
the process, no, and the
And
process.
you couldn't read the micro print
No.
on the label.
No, on the instructions they send with it and all that every time. But if you send a blind person a bunch of stuff to read and you can't talk to her and tell her what the hell you're doing, what is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that goes to anyone that had to deal with that. You know, it's just not right. But that led. Okay, so I get this pot from the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume it's the same I've been getting, no big deal. But the summer at that time used to be slow over there in Oregon. Not too, It's slowed down. Not
the
anymore.
marijuana is not the harvest season in the
Until
fall
September, October,
is the
but
best time,
Right.
and traditionally
June,
there
July,
was
August
always
is dry.
the
It
dry
was
period.
dry. It was dry. It's not true anymore.
Yeah.
But
Now you just go to the store.
oh my, I got 3 within walking distance. Actually 4 if I go to the one and back.
Yeah, yeah.
So they send me this stuff and they don't tell me what it is, but I start taking it, trusting me like an idiot. And the next thing I know, there's something wrong with my eyes. I mean, really something wrong. And I go to the doctor. Why am I not seeing at all? It's all messy and what is going on? And he tests me, and this doctor, this optometrist I had in Eugene, who calls himself an ophthalmologist, I guess. That's where the vision for the commission for the blind send me. We have the worst in the country that I've been in the States where I've had to participate in programs for the blind.
So
We definitely have the
the
worst.
programs in Eugene are much worse than others that you
Oh,
have in
I could never believe
Florida
it.
and
Way
Sacramento.
better, way less than Florida. That Florida left them behind decades ago.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
And I know they do well with the young people. They put them through college, they help them all they can. But if you happen to be an old lady who isn't going to bring them back $1 million, then you're just out of luck and you don't need your sight. I never really have been satisfied with services there at all. It's just
So
been sad.
the federal marijuana went way down in its THC content.
My
And that-
doctor freaked out when he got a report from the other doctor in
Mhm.
Eugene, and he says, I'm buying your ticket with my frequent flyer miles, but I want you in surgery next week that-
in Florida.
in Florida, and I'm in Oregon at this time.
Uh-huh.
But he knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And oh wow. Phew. But anyhow, I went ahead and headed for Florida. The crazy part of it is the first surgery that I ever had in the United States happened on August 10, 1953. Why would I remember that? It was my birthday, okay?
Mhm.
The last surgery I had, how many years later?
So 53 to
To, what year? 12 now.
okay,
We've
2012.
gone through the last millennium pretty much, and
Yeah.
we're in 12. And I'm
So
going
60 years
for
later.
surgery, and I'm really skeptical. I still remember that doctor standing in that courtroom when the prosecution said to him, I heard us, you said there's a surgery that might help her, and he stood in that courtroom and said, under no circumstances would I ever encourage anyone to do any surgery on her eyes. No way.
Mhm.
So that ended that testimony for him.
Mhm. And so, but then they said for you to come have surgery in
Well,
Florida in 2012, and that
He had been talking to me about some surgery he'd been doing in India, which requires a little tube that is, I think it cost them like $3 or $4, something that is totally affordable. In other words, for them, and that's why he was doing all that work in India, and he had been having terrific success there. But I guess he did a little better job of measuring the hole he was putting the big tube into, because mine was a real disaster as a result of just that.
I see.
It detached my retina. I ended up losing my sight. And remember, this eye was already gone, right? So I ended up losing my sight in both eyes, and all I see at its worst because I'm hallucinations. So I can't even see where I'm going because I'm not sure which is real and which is a hallucination.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It was a nightmare, again a nightmare, and the nightmare is always the worst. When you go to sleep, you think you're back wherever you were once upon a time, and then you wake up in the middle of a nightmare from which you will not wake up.
Right.
That's hell. And whenever they talked about terrorists, I just laugh and say, what the hell do you think you are? What do you do to sick people? Those of us who are going blind know the real meaning of the word terror.
Mm-hmm.
And you are terrorists if you maintain this prohibition upon us, just like the head of the lead judge for the DEA told his own agency that they had no right to keep medicine that ended the suffering for so many people, that he had studied over 5,000 years of its history for and against it, and have found not a single line that pointed out to the fact that anyone ever died from marijuana. As a matter of fact, he said you'd have to have a bale fall on your head before it would
Right.
hurt you, right?
Right.
Oh, you have to eat, 2,000 pounds? Some ridiculous
crazy
thing that nobody could
that you
do.
can't possibly do.
No.
Well, we're about out of time, Elvie.
Okay.
We're here in Cali, Colombia for Copa Farallones.
Yes.
And we're about to go for the third day of judging. Today, we judge sativa flowers, which is something that, to me, that's what I think of when I think of Colombia. is sativa flowers.
Yes.
So is there anything you want to say in closing to our audience in Portland, Oregon, Elvie?
You have to remind me not to go off in Spanish
Right.
again on you. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing all of you again, and I thank you for all your work. My life is way sweeter because I live in Oregon, and I'm sure all of you have something to do with that. My Cannabis family, you are precious to me. I love you wherever you are.
All right.
Bye, Portland.
We'll see you next week, and remember to work to restore hemp. Good night.
Hemp can save the planet. It really blows my mind to understand that this war started 100 years ago. Hearst started their false propaganda, the lies, renamed the plant hemp, renamed the plant cannabis, and called it marijuana. Because he lost a lot of timber to the Mexicans, he wasn't too happy with them. But California started the law in 1913. Several states followed quickly, and before you knew it, the conglomerate of the industrial complex had managed to pass a bill called the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. It was proven unconstitutional by 1969, and Nixon knew he didn't have much time to keep this law going, so he gathered his conservative friends to give him advice and find nasty things to say about this plant, but they found the opposite as usual. They found it is not habit-forming, it does not lead to other drugs, it doesn't do any of the things that they said they do, and so he didn't like that report. He tore it up, threw it in the garbage.
That was the Schaefer Commission report.
Schaefer Commission report. But here's the tragedy. So actually the only federal law, you law enforcement, listen carefully, because you took an oath to uphold our Constitution too. That lie, which disrespects my 4th and 5th Amendment rights, that lie that's kept me from getting a job since the 80s, so now I live with a miserable income and you got to support me. That same lie has put over 20 million of us under arrest at one time or another. Now, how many of us are there here? How many people smoke marijuana in this country? What is the percentage of what you arrest? Is it 1%? Is it 10%? Is it 4%? Well, whatever you think it is, multiply that by 25 million and you might get a clue, a hint. Why are we forced to follow, this is the federal law they try to put on the states and everyone else, to follow the legacy of a man who left the presidency in disgrace for lack of honesty? This needs to end. That is one of the main reasons I'm asking everybody to vote for 80, to vote to help the people in Colorado, in Michigan, and send a clear message to the administration. This will not be tolerated any longer. We have not. That's why there are millions of us breaking your law every day. Has no respect for us. It doesn't deserve respect. Now change it. Please change it. Vote on 80. If you live in other states, help those ones in Colorado and Michigan, and definitely contact your legislators and your president and remind them that this man changed these laws all by himself with no help from the Congress or the Senate. It was just an order that he gave that we're living under this lie, and this lie has to end. 5 generations of lies and misinformation has rendered us a nation very, very incapable of making rational decisions, mostly because our system is not satisfied. The endocannabinoid system that opens our mind and expands our thinking and allows us to be real human beings.
That was a great film. That was produced through the aegis of The Body Shop. The lady, what's her name? Anita Roderick?
Yeah.
Anita Roderick? She just passed away recently. That's a shame. So when did this first come out? Was it
In 2000.
in 2000? So time flies. You've had a stroke since then, but you've come back a long way since then.
About 1 month after
After this came out, you were here in Oregon with that stroke.
I can't talk or walk for
You couldn't
2
talk
or
at all
3
for a couple years.
Yeah. And now I'm getting my voice back, but I always had my attitude back.
Right. You were there, you just couldn't say it that well.
You
but you're
never
getting better
lost
at it,
the
that's for
attitude.
Once you know that hemp is the only thing that will save the fucking world, well, I'm sorry.
That's why we have that disclaimer on the front of the show, for things like that.
But Okay. Well,
It's the plant that will save the planet.
50% to 80% of all food in the whole world was hemp until about 1850 to 1900. 50
It was the
to
main
80%.
illuminant, or fuel for plants.
Out of 3 million plants, the number 1 to 100 in all the energy and vitamins and minerals is hemp. Until you get to 101 soybeans.
Yeah. Only soybeans aren't as digestible.
No.
Hemp protein actually meets human nutrition requirements.
No. It's 1,000% digestible by the whole human body.
Yeah. And it tastes good too.
25% of a gram every day, and I eat it.
Yeah.
But it huge doses of THC, and it's more than 100. It's almost, I don't know, 16 ounces of the prime bud dried. To 2 ounces of oil or teasel.
You're talking about the Rick Simpson cancer healing
100
medicine
and
oil.
at 99%, and at least I thought it was 60% at the beginning, but it's 99%, and only on the 4 stages. The first stage, second stage, third stage, we didn't go because those are 100% curable.
So you're
The
talking about
fourth
cancer stage.
yes, well, the first stage is cancer, the second stage is cancer, the third stage is cancer.
And so this
but
oil
and
kills the cancer.
fourth stage, you're going to home to die because there's nothing else
Right.
you can do there. And all those people, 1,500 of them, got
This
THC,
oil, high cannabinoid oil
huge
doses.
and they all 100% closed, saved, and they're never coming back again. For 7 years, not one person has got it back.
That's like a miracle, isn't it?
And
No, they have 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 months to live, and they
use
all
this chemo.
live 7 years now, and there's no trace of cancer anymore, and it's against the law in the United States for 37 years, and we got it in 1973, 74, and 75 in the Commonwealth of Virginia at Richmond. Get it?
They showed that it was useful to kill cancer back then.
100%.
Right.
Not the skin cancer, melanoma cancer, brain cancer,
Lung cancer, prostate cancer.
Yeah.
All these different cancers
And
are
100%.
right.
And it's what's great too. We've been reporting on this at Normal. We just had 3 stories in a row that came up on this, where people were researchers, of course, overseas.
I'm going to tell you, Normal, for the last 7 years, has said, oh, this guy doesn't have the cancer of no. And I thought, everybody is wrong about this because I know it. 37 years ago, I wrote the fucking book on it.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is we're starting to find all of these.
I was there. I remember.
We're finding all
You
this
wrote
research
that
that's
book.
coming out now that's just kind of nibbling around the edges here. We had a report on, they did a long-term cohort study of chronic marijuana smokers who've been smoking for 10 to 20 years and found that they had less incidence of head and neck cancer than people who don't smoke at all.
Yeah.
They find that the THC directly injected into prostate cancer cells in vivo or in vitro kills the prostate cancer cells. And we found and reported on how people that smoke marijuana, when they take a look at their lung function, their lungs are no worse off than people that don't smoke at all.
And so marijuana prohibition is truly evil. It's an evil, evil thing to
And I
deny
don't
people a cure from
understand why
cancer, to
you
deny our planet. I mean, it's earth medicine. That's what John Trudell was telling us a year ago here. that will solve a lot of our problems environmentally, a lot of our physical problems, a lot of our
70%
economic
all-
problems.
Okay. Cancer.
We're believers. You can tell that.
I want to tell y'all a little bit about a plant I know that can save the world. It grows long and tall and has flowers that can make your mind swirl. It's a funky plant with a fiber that is resistant to rain and mold. It's the strongest plant fiber known to man, the best rope you'll ever hold. Well, the pioneers covered up the wagon trains with a canvas made of hemp. In Washington and Jefferson, they grew it on their farms and said to make the most of it. The first stars and stripes were sewn on hemp, the first Constitution too. It's used around the world for food, fiber, oil, medicine, and fuel. And if we press the seeds, we won't have no need for any other oil. We can make paints and inks or run our cars going back next season. It'll fix the soil, the most nutritious seed we can put in our mouth with omega-6 and 3. We can feed the world with the tree of life and live sustainably. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. We'll grow fields and hemp instead. We can make our paper, build a house from it. Got us plant, grow wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa, whoa. La 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 la. Whoa, whoa. Hemp plant make the best medicines on earth. Helps cancer and AIDS patients eat their food. Helps those with depression overcome the blues. Glaucoma, epilepsy, nausea, insomnia, stress, neurosis, psychosis, pain, PMS. All the studies have been done and all the doctors agree, but they can't make money off this plant, you see, because it's free. It grows from a seed, a wild and free life we ought to be. You know the future is grown in our own backyards. But if we cut down all the trees, we won't have nowhere to breathe. We'll grow fields and hemp instead. We can make our bed, we'll build a house from it. Got us men grow wild and free, living the way that we ought to be. Gonna leave my children a better world than my ancestors left me. Whoa, whoa. La 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 la. Whoa, whoa. So in this modern day and age, when we seem to lack spirituality, this one single plant can bring us back 10,000 years in history. To the Shiva Puranas, the Jesus, the Christ, to the Buddha, the pagans, the goddess, the light, to commune with all the animals, be one with all the trees, to realize the goddess seek is inside me. As the earth is a mother, we gotta take care of the earth. The earth